I'm Max Feldman with the Business Teachers Toolkit, and in this unit, you are learning how to understand your pay stub to make sure that your employer is paying you what it is that you have earned. In this unit, I run this as the second unit in a 10-unit series for a semester-long course of personal finance, money management. The objective for this class or for this particular topic is that students will be able to create and complete a pay stub by calculating their net income after applying common deductions for their chosen semester career. Let's get to it. The topics for this unit are as follows. I'll go over what the unit work is. We'll have a couple questions of the day or problems of the day, talking about hourly versus salary. How do you define overtime? How is it calculated? Lunch provisions. What about breaks in between? Are those paid? Are those not paid? Hourly versus salary versus commission pay structures. And then I'll teach you how to take a pay stub, complete it on your own to make sure that you understand how all the numbers are working so that when you receive that paycheck and it looks a little bit funny, you know exactly what the culprit is and how you can rectify that. We'll do a final check for understanding at the end. Problem of the day. You've got two job offers. You're highly skilled, highly qualified. You're still in high school. These two job offers are as follows. One of them says, hey, you could earn $39,000 per year as a salary. Job offer number two says you could earn $18 per hour with an average of 40 hours per week. Let's assume this is over summer and you have 40 hours per week to work. Which one do you choose? There's no one right answer. And the reason being, as students will discuss, they'll instantly do the math and realize that job number one pays more money. But does it? The real question lies in how could job number two potentially earn them more money if money is the only objective? And in this case, it's going to ultimately lead to discussions to get your students talking about the idea of overtime and the potential to earn more money. Next, we move into some definitions. We talk about what does it mean to get paid hourly. Most students can figure this out. They know how much money they earn per hour. They know how many hours that they work. And then from there, they can determine how much money they would potentially earn. We define overtime and give some examples. Overtime being defined as time worked beyond your regular 8-hour shift, not counting unpaid meal breaks. Federal law says that meal breaks of 30 minutes or longer are unpaid unless you are required to work during them. I give you an example where you can work through it, figure out exactly how much time of one work day is overtime. I present a slide using the overtime law as per the federal overtime laws, which is also linked on this slide, and then move into an overtime law example. After defining overtime, we go into overtime law. That overtime law is federally mandated, and it gives you a link here on this slide to take you to the federal overtime law so you can learn more about it. I give you a number of different definitions and things that you need to know about it, and then eventually into overtime law examples where students will take this scenario, they'll work through it, figure out exactly how much that employee is potentially going to earn in that given week based on those federal overtime laws. A few more examples are given as well as the steps to calculate it so that students can not only see what the question is, but also see every single step included in it. We then talk about a state specific for California, which has different laws. And I do that specifically because that's where I'm located. And a number of my students that see this that are former students of mine will also have the opportunity to view. And seeing those different laws that are applicable here in California, I provide an example as well as the example steps on how to calculate such. In most high school student examples, you'll find that, well, they are paid hourly. But what happens once they start leveling up, increasing their education or their skill sets? Perhaps they may not work in an hourly setting any longer. Maybe they start earning salary. Maybe they work in a sales position where they earn commission. We define what each of those are as well as provide some examples to go along with it. A little bit more on commission using the example of what is very commonly discussed in my class of real estate agents. Students are very interested in this career path. Pretty soon we'll start looking at our own pay stub, but before we do that, the first thing that we need to do is identify what are some things that students know, what are things that they've heard about, wonder, or just don't understand at all about an image of a pay stub. I present them with this image right here so that they can start talking, whether it's amongst their group or throughout the class in a general discussion. Oftentimes, one of the number one things that I see that students are unfamiliar with is year to date, or YTD. We define that as the period of time from the beginning of the calendar year, January 1st, all the way until the current date. And then students start wondering, well, why does this even matter? Why do I need to know this? And I share with them that, well, if you need to borrow money and you bring your pay stub to a lender, whether it's to buy a car or buy a house, they are going to want to know how much money have you made from the beginning of the year to the current date, year to date. They'll take all of those pay stubs, figure out the calculation to determine what is the likelihood of your ability to repay them on time, every time, and hopefully in full. I give you this example so that students can use it with the context of pretending that they are a bank and then having questions based solely on this information. What would they want to know for the borrower before lending them money? And this page right here brings us to the grand show of this entire unit and what students will be doing for the majority of the class time. And so we open up this pay stub activity. They click the pay stub actually linked in this document. I personally use a product called Pear Deck. Some people use Nearpod, or you could also just link the slides so students can access them or provide them with the assignment in your own PDF or however else you choose to do so. But in this setting, they click on the link, it opens up a pay stub, and let's get to that pay stub now so we can start walking through how to complete it. All right, here we go. We are going to start adding some text over here to our pay stub. So by clicking on this text box, then clicking anywhere on the document, it will prompt you to make a copy. Once you've done that, and I'm doing this in Cami, so using Cami is a PDF editor, gives me the power to make adjustments on the fly right here to any given PDF. So here we go. Let's say that my student chooses to work at blank unified school district. And then from there, I would have them put in whatever address it is that they want to choose. In the pay period ending section, we are going to say, let's go with August 31st. So we're going to say 08/31, 2000, and we're filming this right now in 2025. And the pay date happens to be, let's say, September 1st. So September 1st, 2025. And next up, this is going to be the name of the person that is receiving this pay stub. So in my case, I'll go ahead and say me, Mr. Feldman, Max Feldman. I would put my address right there, and of course have your students use a fictitious address for privacy purposes. And then in this section, I would have my students refer back to the Unit 1 payroll deduction packet. However, if you are someone that hasn't done that activity with mine and you're just joining us with this standalone unit, that's totally okay. Have your students pick a fictitious career, figure out their annual salary, calculate out their monthly gross income. In this case, we're using salary, and I'm just going to, for the sake of using ease, say $10,000 per month. We'll come back to year to date in just a moment. For the federal income taxes, I like to use, and I'll just put this over off to the side, I've created a tinyurl.com/fake tax. Let me move this down a little bit further. And it gives you an average of the tax brackets that take into consideration all of the previous brackets that they may have encountered, as well as the standard deduction. So when you go to that tinyurl.com/fake tax, they'll take you to a link. You find the range within your annual salary. And once you are there at that annual salary, you can then determine what is a rate that you can use. And in my case, I'm going to say that my person is earning $10,000 a month. And with that $10,000 a month, let's say that they're paying 14% in federal taxes. So I know that in that case, and I got that number, that 14% using the tinyurl.com/fake tax. If that is what they are paying, then it would be $1,400 in federal income tax. And if your state does pay state taxes, we would use whatever that number would be. In my case, I'm just going to use 5%. I'm here in California. And again, state taxes are progressive. They change with how much money it is that you earn. But at 5%, that means that this person, this fictitious character, would earn $500 or pay $500 in state taxes. For FICA tax, in the previous unit, we went over the idea of FICA tax being the combination of Social Security in tandem with Medicare insurance. And so the total for that FICA total tax, Social Security is 6.2% and Medicare is 1.45%, giving me a total of 7.65% of my income. Using my trusty calculator here, I'm going to take $10,000 and multiply that by 0.0765, which leaves me with $765, which is what I would pay in Social Security and Medicare. Next up In Unit 1 summary, if you again had purchased that unit, you would see that for our example, we used $120 for medical insurance. If you're not using that as your baseline, by all means, you could have students and do a spin-off on this activity and have them look up how much would medical or health insurance cost for them individually. And in this case, I used $120 for my previous unit, so that's what I'll stick with, and that's per month. For a 401k, if your employer is offering a 401k type of a contribution, you definitely want to make sure that you are maxing out that employee contribution match. So in this case, let's say that we're putting in 3% of our gross monthly income into the 401k. For that number, I'm going to go ahead and put in my 3%, which would be $300 of $10,000. And because my employer is matching it, over here on the right column, on the section that's not a deduction, but rather just an addition to my 401k account, I'm also going to put another $300. So the total going in my 401k here is my 3% plus my employer's contribution of 3%, giving me 6% total, which is $600. And I tell my students, if there's nothing else they learn this entire semester, if your employer offers a 401k match, take it, max it out to the fullest, and better yet, if they offer a Roth 401k, that is a gold mine if you can find your way into that, because then you pay taxes on the dollars now, and it grows tax-free until you go to retirement as early as 59 and a half years old. Life insurance. We use a number of different discussions about life insurance, and if that's something that you and your students are comfortable talking about, and if the families within your district or if you and your family are comfortable learning more about it, I'm a big fan of life insurance just to give myself that peace of mind knowing that my family would be protected if something were to happen to me. Because my students are on the younger side, we use a lower amount of money per month for life insurance because, quite frankly, they are statistically on the lower side of any kind of mortality. And so with that, we are going to put anywhere, I don't know, $10, $15, $20. For my case, I'm going to put $10 right here per month in life insurance. If I was to go and take every one of these deductions right here and subtract it from my gross income, that will leave me with my net pay, my net income. So I'm going to do that right now. Using my calculator off to the side here, I've got $10,000 and I'm subtracting out 500 minus 765 minus 120 minus 300, which is my 401k contribution, minus another $10 in my life insurance. Federal tax, 1,400 minus 1,400 leaves me with $6,905. That's $6,905 ends up being my net income. That is the pay that I earn after all of my deductions are taken out. The next step from here is to figure out my year to date. Now, the way that we will calculate this is if we look up here where it says the period ending, 8/31, that means that I'm getting paid all the way through August 31st. If I'm getting paid all the way through August 31st, I know that I can calculate from the beginning of the year, which is January 1st, all the way until August 31st, how many months have passed. So we're going to say all of January, all of February, March, April, May, June, July, and then leaving us with all of August, because we worked all of August all the way through 8/31. That's 8 full months. Because it's 8 full months, I'm going to multiply each one of these sections by 8. So in this case, 10,000 times 8 leaves me with $80,000. 1,400 times 8, and every single one of these sections is going to get multiplied by 8. 1,400 times 8 leaves me with $11,200. 500 times 8 leaves me with 4,000. 765 times 8 is 6,120. 6,120. $120 times 8 is $960. 300 times 8 is $2,400. And 10 times 8 is $80. That will give me all of my year-to-date totals so that if I'm a lender, I can look at all of this information and I can calculate exactly how much money it is that I've had in deductions for each one of my segments. I can figure out how much money, if I'm a lender, that I've earned in gross income. I could also figure out how much I have earned in net income as well. The last thing we want to do on this side here is go over to the year to date in 401k contributions, and this is from my employer's match. And I'm going to take my $300 times 8 again, which leaves me with $2,400 total. So for the entire year, for 8 months, actually, I'm sorry, not the entire year, but for 8 full months, that leaves me with contributions of a total of $4,800 to my 401k, which will be eligible to be withdrawn as early as 59 and a half years old. I will have to pay taxes on those dollars upon retirement unless it's in a Roth 401k, and that would put me in a more tax advantageous position. With those pieces of information said, we're on to write this check. Down here in this section, I would put whatever the address and name of the unified school district is, or wherever it is that your student chose to work. And then I would also put their address here. But for right now, I'll leave that alone. Check date. This is going to be coming back up here. What's the pay date? If the pay date is September 1st, that's what's going to show up on the check date. So I'm going to put 9/1/2025. Who is it getting paid to? Well, it's getting paid to me, the person that is on the pay stub. So in this case, I'll put my name. And the amount is this net pay right here. So the net pay comes down in this section as the numerical form of $6,905 with no change. And then over here in written form, I'm going to write out $6,905. But I don't just leave it there. I like to put a line all the way across so that I know that nobody can forge or adjust anything on that check. And since there is no change in this particular situation, you can go 00 over 100 pennies, and that shows that there's no change in this solution. This right here, folks, is the pay stub activity in its complete fullness. And this would be an opportunity for students to look through the pay stub and see, hey, I understand where all the deductions are coming out of from my gross income to get me to net income, so that when they get their real life paycheck and they see something's a little bit off and the calculation's wrong, they can go back to their employer and hold an educated conversation to make sure they're paid for everything it is that they worked for. That is the power of the importance of a class like this, personal finance, money management. Now that we've gone through the paycheck and you filling out your entire pay stub to get you to that bottom line paycheck, I have students check for understanding by turning and talking to their table mates. And this is the prompt. Your friend just saw that their first paycheck is way less than expected. How would you explain the reasoning to them? This turns into a great opportunity for me as the teacher to overhear what students are saying and make sure that they understand. Well, it's deductions, it's taxes, it's life insurance, it's health insurance, it's 401k contributions, Social Security, Medicare, and so many other things. This slide right here has nothing to do with the class or the content, but students like playing games, so we play the alphabet game. You click on the link on the slide here, has no relationship to pay stubs, but it's fun. And the task is to see who can type the alphabet the fastest. Kids get into this. This is a fun one. I always close out every single unit, giving students a chance to ask questions about pay stubs or anything from the unit. I also do this in a Pear Deck form so students can type their question to me. For that student that's shy, that just doesn't always want to raise their hand, they're introverted or fearful of what other people might say or think, and I wish I could get them over that, but I can't. But I can give them a voice where they otherwise may not use theirs, and I do it using Pear Deck so that they can type their questions to me, and I can clarify anything that might possibly hinder their general working knowledge of the content that we just went through. Thanks for watching another Business Teacher's Toolkit lesson.